Hey, y'all. Happy Wednesday. It's your girl, Coach Christal. If you're just joining us, welcome to the Steps and Stages community. And most of all, welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays, a time where we get to have some candid conversations with people I admire, people I learn from, and people who I want to share with you. If you're just joining us, I want to welcome you into the way that we start each and every idea, session, or show at Steps and Stages. And it just says that a lot of things happen before this, and I guarantee a lot of things are going to happen after this, but I promise to be here with you now. Please be here with me now. This is part 2 of a 3-part series with Dr. Jasper on everything from the stories we tell and don't tell to hitting rock bottom, recovering and reflecting, and ultimately something that he and I share, which is a love of SoulCare. So without further ado, help me welcome our guest, part 2 of a series in hitting rock bottom and the reflections that come after. Dr. Kurt, welcome.
Coach Christal, thank you for having me again. We rocking out on our second part, 3-part series. I'm excited.
We're rocking out, and I just want y'all to notice our costumes. Like, we really didn't plan this, but he jumped on with his shirt on, and I was like, well, I got to put my shirt on. Like, what are we doing here? Look, I can be right.
I'm getting that orange one, though. You know that. I'm going to get that orange, right?
So tonight, we're talking about rock bottoms, right? And everybody's rock bottom don't look the same. And sometimes people around us can notice when we're in our rock bottom and sometimes they can't. So Dr. Kurt, I'm going to pass the mic to you tonight to kick us off. What are we talking about with rock bottoms? And tell us the story of one of yours.
Okay, but before, if you don't mind, Coach Professor Christal, I would like to first just acknowledge you. You are one of my favorite people on planet. Your brilliance. I enjoy speaking with you. You're like the little sister who's much smarter than me. So I'm honored to be in your space, right? You've allowed me in your world in more ways than one, and I'm grateful. I call you Professor Coach Christal, although you're a college professor. But when I hear professor, I think of you as the epitome of being a professor because you do exactly what you say.
Thank you.
You profess and you do it. You live by your own words, and that is why I refer to you as Professor Coach Christal, if you don't mind that.
No, I don't mind. I appreciate the distinction because, there are a lot of coaches who don't actually teach. So I appreciate that distinction that I can talk about it, teach it, and be an example. So I really thank you for that. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. So we're talking about rock bottom with an S and reflections with an S. Now, it's super dope that you added the reflections. I've done a lot of interviews around rock bottom. I specialize in them from time to time throughout my days. But I'm the reflection piece was brilliant, Coach, because the whole purpose of rock bottom is to reflect, right? In my opinion. One of my rock bottoms lasted for about 5 years. And I was a full-fledged adult. So my rock bottom lasted from like 39 to 40, late 43, 44. And it was a time where everything crashed. And I actually let it crash after trying to resist and hold on for dear life. And I literally hold on for dear life. So back at around 39, my marriage crumbled, my family crumbled. Both my parents had transitioned in a few years of time, and that was during the marriage, during the divorce. The market crashed, and so my entire livelihood was tied up in the real estate economy at the time. And I just let it all crash. I was on the brinks of being suicidal. I went to 5 different therapists, and I was at an all-time rock bottom. Now, the unique thing about my rock bottom is I had absolutely no tools to like sort of help myself at the time. The tools that I had mastered the tools that I mastered to be successful in other areas were non-applicable at the time, right? Like I tried to intellectualize, I tried to thug, gangster, finesse, work hard, everything.
Yeah.
I couldn't do it. And so after a while, I surrendered. After I made things worse, I really turned it over to the higher power. And it was at that point that I started to feel hopeful and started to get some legs under me and gradually crawl myself out of it. Rock bottom is where all the magic and self-discovery happens, right? That it ain't on the mountaintop, it's in the valley.
Right. Yeah. That's interesting. I think sometimes, Kurt, people miss that. They think that the mess is where you give up, not give in to the bigger power, right? And I think it could be the same for some people. But the fact that a lot of people's rock bottoms look very different. Everybody doesn't lose everything. Some people just lose themselves, right? Some people hold on to all the assets and just crumble from the inside. When we can't see people hit rock bottom, I think we take it even. I think that's the more severe, but I think people take it less seriously from the outside, right? So we both have instances of family or friends who battle addiction, right? And so sometimes I've thought in my family that I've seen people hit rock bottom. Lo and behold, it's like Eric Mays, when low and lower, like it's not there yet, right? They haven't hit the bottom of what they need to get that point of clarity. From where the outside, from my perspective, I'm like, this is it. Well, there's nowhere else to go, right? So, I mean, one of my personal rock bottoms, I looked amazing. I just had a baby. My body snatched back. Everybody in my field of dance at the time were like, oh my God, honey, you slay. You got that body back. Oh my God. I was depressed. I was like literally 30 pounds lighter than I am right now. I was waking up at 4:30 in the morning, getting my son to daycare by 6:30, living in a 1-bedroom apartment where I was living in the living room and renting out the bedroom in the back to make ends meet. I was going to rehearsal till 10 o'clock, picking him up, doing it all over again. And I was exhausted. I was depressed. I was lost. And I had said right before that, because I think I was battling another form of exhaustion after kind of canceling a wedding and buying an apartment and looking as though I was getting it together, but feeling really torn from the inside. I just remember the rock bottom. I think I remember the season. I remember the decision that started the rock bottom. And it's something I will never say again. I fell down in front of a mirrored closet in that 1-bedroom apartment. And I said, oh my God, I'm so tired of being Crystal Brown. And that was the dumbest thing I've ever said in my life. And I will never say it again, because I went through 2 years of being normal and it was the worst 2 years of my life. So, rock bottom looks so different for other people from other people's perspectives.
Wow. That's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah, I on my rock bottom journey, it's funny you bring up addiction. One of the things that I promised myself before bottom is that I was not turning to substance. So during those years, I was totally sober. Like I did my mental health rock bottom to mountaintop totally sober. I had every reason to drink. Right? I did it totally like 7 years. I drank absolutely no alcohol. But I drank no alcohol and changed my diet, and that sustained me. Like that was my pillar, sort of my anchor at the time. And it just, and I'm glad because I said I promised myself when I come, not if, but when I come out of this, I want to make sure that I don't have to do a complete extreme makeover, right? Physically, with the physical transformation in my mind. So
yeah. But I mean, that's a different perspective than most people have when they're at rock bottom, right? Most people are thinking about the next moment, not the end of the actual turmoil, right? I mean, that's kind of what I was experiencing. It was a day-to-day existence. Like, how do yes, I know this will, by the grace of God, I'm from the South, I know this will be over soon. The storm don't last always. But it was day to day, like, just can I get up at 4:30 in the morning, right? Just can I survive the next thing? So how could can you even contextualize how you had that perspective?
Right. So great question. So fair enough that half of what I said was a reflective, right? So of course the first few years I was like, just give me the moment to the moment. I was like, yeah, I'm starting to get some groundwork, not where I want to be, but I started to see some light at the end of the tunnel. But one of the things that I did is I used to stay up all night and sleep all during the day. So I can miss interacting with people. I can miss the world. So I'd stay up all night, and then when the world got up, I'd sleep those days, and I had that cycle. So I changed my cycle to sort of hide in plain sight. I thought, at the time I thought it was helpful, but it really just allowed me to hide. And so halfway through, I remember a good friend saying, "You'll come out of this ready." And that was about halfway through. And so once I started having some people pouring to me, I still was like, I ain't ready yet. Not that I love where I am, but when I get ready, I got to hit the ground running. And, I can't take another loss. I don't know if I can give it 1,000 because I don't know if I can handle another loss.
Right.
At least if I half-ass and it don't work out, I can convince myself that's it. Which was not my doing, not ever in my life, not academically, not professionally, not ever. But that rock bottom is where discovery happens.
What if you could put it into 3 words? What were the 3 things you discovered?
I discovered that I have resilience, right? I discovered that I lacked a high level of emotional intelligence, and I thought I was pretty solid, but I wasn't, right? And I discovered that healing is in partnership. Like healing is in connection, right? I tried the Lone Ranger healing, like I'm gonna do it my way, which I've done. So those were the three things that stood out for me. I was resilient. I got different. I needed to stay connected. For men, it's easy to withdraw, right? It's easy to withdraw, and I had every reason to withdraw because the people to me, they started to withdraw. So it was easy for me not to sort of put forth any additional effort in holding relationships together. And then I just lacked the emotional fitness, awareness, and flexibility to sustain myself. And then at the time, I just got tired of acting out. I got tired of disappointing myself through acting out.
Yeah. And I think that's one of those things we talked about last week, right? When you keep your agreements with yourself as confidence, when you keep your agreements with other people, it's called integrity. And when we are building our value system on what we do with or for other people, when we withdraw and they no longer need us or validate us, then we got to find something deeper in ourselves. I think I was talking to my clients about a couple months ago, and we were talking about not necessarily rock bottom, but we were talking about those miniature deaths that happen along the way of transformation. And the provocative question I pose to them is like, who about you or what about you needs to die right now? And for me, because I'm always using myself as an example. For me, that poor artist mentality has to die, right? Because for so long, the commodity of my body, my sweat equity, if you will, has been what people patronize. And so during that time where I was extremely exhausted, falling in front of that closet, what I was really saying was, I wish someone could see me and not what I do. Right. And so then I had to start peeling back the layers of that. Like, well, who are you? What do you do? Like, what's important? What do you think is valuable? And moving from the stage to a different stage of life has also been bringing up that kind of conversation of what I value about me rather than what has been valuable in the past. Right. And so I also kind of hear some of that, like, okay, like, but who are you without all the other stuff?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Which was the ultimate gift, right? That only I could give to myself as a result of hitting rock. But you said something that stood out to me, Coach. You said many deaths, right? The miniature deaths.
Right.
Transformation is full of grief. Transformation is full of grief, like because of that. New beginnings, the dying off old ideas, old concepts, old insights, in the rebirth, right? And it's full of grief because, as I always say, almost on a daily basis, we are all more living things than actual deceased family members and loved ones, right? We relegate grief to only the departure of loved ones through death or physical transformation. No. Any loss requires some level of grief. Some level of grief. So when you're hitting rock bottom, as you're going down, as you bottoming out, you got to sort of release some of that baggage as you before you hit that bottom.
Yeah, it's true. And those transformations happen, I think, on many levels to all of us all the time, Kurt, before we even hit rock bottom, but we're not noticing and we're not reflecting on what we just attained from this hard experience, this hard conversation, right? Before, in 2 lifetimes ago, when I was in this really long-term intimate relationship that was about to lead to marriage, we were both artists and we would be on tour. And I would really often think about coming in and out of our home after or leaving for tour, coming back as the way that rockets take off, right? Like rockets take off, and before they get to another stratosphere, they got to let some things go, right? And they got to get through, they got to be so heat resistant that they can burn through different atmospheres. And when they get to that new stratosphere, they feel like they're just floating in space. But then on the way back, you got to go right back through that same like burning temperature, right? And sometimes you got to just crash land. And it was often the sense in our relationship that coming in and out of our home, in and off tour, was like a crash landing, right? Because we had been in all these different atmospheres, which were really changing who we were at different moments. And then we were trying to figure out how to meet each other back in this place, in this energy that we called home, right? And so when we think about even our own kind of transformation, the place we've been calling home is really the identity that we've been most comfortable in. And so when we have these miniature deaths, I don't even know how we tell people about
it. It's hard. It's hard. I mean, the fear of sharing it is the thing, right? That's the thing. I know for me, not yet fully understanding the distinction between guilt and shame kind of kept me stuck, right? And then, I did work around that. And I was like, I equated to go and try on a suit or a tux, and you're in that 3, 4, 5-way mirror, right? And you get to see different angles of your being. is when you get to give yourself the benefit of a new identity, or at least a new angle of the identity that you've been holding on to for so long. And it's a scary sight to see the back of your head and your ear, right? Things that we normally don't see. But when you allow that, when you let it in, when you be with it in that mirror, you don't show up so straight to yourself. And for me, that was paramount. Like, what is it that you're afraid of within yourself?
Yeah, for me, I think it's partially what are you afraid of, and what have you not loved enough, right? Because a lot of those parts of ourselves, we haven't fallen in love with them. We haven't done the work to see them for what they taught us, so we don't want anybody else to see them yet, right? Like, as dancers, we do a lot of strange things, a lot of crazy things with our bodies, right? Just to be able to think we're qualified to be seen, right? So we joke a lot. I was like, oh, I remember I used to put my feet under the bed, my feet under the couch, right? And that means like you put your tips of your toes under the couch, and you try to pull back and straighten your legs until your foot points, as far as it goes. And so we'd be like, how you used to have your feet on the couch, right? People, oh my God, because you have such nice feet. I'm like, girl, these feet were under the couch, right? Like for years, like trying to just straighten them out. But nobody sees the ugly part, right? Nobody sees that part. Nobody sees like you sleeping with a belt around your hips to see if you can have some more turnout and waking up not being able to walk because you're so cramped up. Nobody sees that part, right? Just like nobody sees the broken relationships. Nobody sees the endless nights of crying. Nobody sees you when you're sleeping during the day, right? Because, you're not putting yourself in a position to be seen. So I think that next stage of transformation, when we're coming out of rock bottom, is like, can I even allow myself to be seen?
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah, that was exactly right. Yeah, I'm still sharing aspects of my rock bottom. Yeah. And the more I share, as I'm still, self-discovering, the more men are like, man, like, wow, I didn't know that. Right. For example, this was more than 10 years, but at the time of my rock bottom, to go and apply for a EBT card, a food stamp card, right?
Yes.
Right. So, which is what it's for. And so at the time, when I had my girls, they were younger, on my weekends, I needed help feeding them as I was bottoming out. And so I posted that maybe a few months ago, like literally the card, because I had a picture of it. And one of my good friends was like, whoa, two things, bro. We both were rock bottom at the time. And I didn't know I could get a food stamp card, because as men, we only associate food stamps with women and children, right? He in Atlanta like, bruh, you posted your food stamp card 10 years later? We could have been eating good while we bought them. So my point is, even revealing that 10 years later, guys are saying, I had no idea that a single man who is rock bottoming out could apply for government assistance. Right. He didn't have a no. And I didn't at the time. So yeah. The freeing of, it's as a Black man, it's the giving brothers the freedom to rock bottom with sort of like with some grace and dignity. Yeah. Knowing that someone they know has been there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, that's true. I mean, I had a food stamp card, right? All the things. And, it was kind of, again, like the way that artists have to function in America, it was kind of glamorous. It was like, you got food stamps? Yeah, I got food stamps. You didn't get a food stamps, right? It was just like, because artists are, we're not necessarily the most well-paid people in America, right? So understanding how the system works was a big deal. So when I was kind of hitting rock bottom, the second phase of that was then having my son, right? Having my son in that kind of survival mode. And I tell people all the time, and I'm not one of those mamas that glorifies parenting or pregnancy. Like if you want to talk about the real deal of, how weird it is and the pain and the mucus plugs and all that, I'm down. I am going to be talking about, oh, it's so wonderful, the flower. No, That's not what's happening. An alien is taking over your body, and you deal with it, right? So, when I think about that, like really, that whole pregnancy era, that was another stage of the rock bottom, and I didn't fall in love with my son until he was 2. And people are like, what do you mean? I saw you and Gabe. Y'all was so cute. And I was like, I hear you. But I'm telling you from in here, that I was parenting the same way that I was trained to be an educator for the first 2 years. After we got out of survival mode, I looked at him one day, once God had built us a house and moved us to a different state. I looked at him and was like, oh, this one's mine. I need to love him more. Like, not just keep him alive, get him into daycare, make sure he's provided for, get his energy. He's a boy, teach him the words, ask him what does he see, make sure he's verbal. Like it was a program, right? And so I think that's another thing that happens at rock bottom, is that we start to understand the essential nature of what needs to happen rather than the extravagant ideas that are possible, right? It's not about like, what would I love to eat? It's about, are we eating?
Yeah. I get that. Wow. Thank you for that. Yeah, I one of the other gifts of rock bottom is realize how I abused my strong suits. I heavily relied on the things I know could get stuff done, while ignoring some stuff I should have been working on. Rock bottom does you that favor. No question. So because I heavily relied on my strong suits, they became abusive, abnormally used, right? To the point where even when I didn't have to put them forth, I led with them without developing the other aspects of what I know now is comprehensive, right? And so rock bottom gave me that gift of self-discovery. Like, you're a whole dude. Like, outside of acting and providing, right? Like, outside of all the accolades, like, you're a whole person. And it's okay. That was another gift of rock bottom self-discovery.
Yeah. When I reflect on it, I mean, just listening to you, what that makes me think of, right, is that what I delved deeply in during that time was my addiction to work as well. Right? Like, I'm a recovering workaholic. I mean, I've said that to several people, and they're like, "Oh my God, you do so much, but are you really in recovery?" And I'm like, "You have no idea what I used to do with like a quarter of the resources that I have now. So like, just trust me, I'm chilling. Wow. Like, just trust that whatever you see now is not even me hitting the gas, right?" And so I just I really am and it really kind of, it's one of those things that I was so aware of in my rock bottom and coming out of that and kind of changing through the workaholic period of my life, that it has become I would say a little bit of a barrier probably to the next level of my own success, because I'm so afraid that if I hit the gas again, I might forget I have a baby again. I might be like, oh, you here? Like, I could be like, it's like putting the blinders on a horse. It's dangerous, right? And I know that about myself now. I know, like, when it's like on, it's on. Like, everybody, nobody else. No, I don't see anything else, right? And I feel like that's at this stage in my life, knowing what I know about my own capacity, my own gifts, and the way that I would love to live. I often check myself on that, about like, okay, I mean, you and I were just joking before, like, Wednesday's my day off. You're like, but we're doing a podcast. I'm like, yeah, but that's not really work, right? That's what addicts say. They go, no, I'm not smoking crack. Right? That's what addicts say. Right? So I'm very clear about like where I need to right. Because I could end up at rock bottom again.
That's exactly right.
I can end up at rock bottom again and just be at a whole nother level of the thing that the thing that broke me in the beginning. Exhaustion.
Yeah, me as well. Me as well. Exhaustion is my go-to word. It has defined me in ways that are now empowered, right? Once I got it, and when I mention it to the men I work with, I literally be like, bruh, I get it. I hear you. You just exhausted. They're like, wait, what? Yeah. And then we start that. Like it lands differently.
Yeah.
One of the things that I heard, obviously, being in this world, in this climate, as a black man, I'm still hitting rock. It ain't bottom, but I'm hitting some rocks, right?
Yeah.
And so I recently hit a rough patch, is what I call it. And a colleague, shared a woman. She was like, "I'm sorry that happened to you." And I was like, "Wait, why are you sorry?" And then once I got present and let my ego and them stuff, I really felt the gift of a word saying, "I'm sorry that you had to go through that."
Yeah.
Right. And so because it warmed my heart, I started. And so now, as inappropriate or untimely as it may be, I make it a point to share it with my males, my black males, who come to me with that heaviness. And I see it, I see the transformation in the moment, just like the gift was granted to me. When I look at a brother and was like, man, I'm sorry that happened to you.
Yeah.
Like I'm sorry, not from a sympathy standpoint, but from an empathy standpoint. Like I get it, man. Like, but I'm sorry that happened to you, and you're gonna be okay.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And I think that's the other part, the reflection piece, is that even when we see the rocky patches coming, we're like, yes, and now we know what the work really is. Right.
Yeah.
I have a
Absolutely.
dear mentor. We have a dear
Absolutely.
I have a dear mentor who's like, you can cry and we're gonna keep working. And I'm like,
Exactly.
and so a lot of
Come
people get offended.
on, we got stuff to do. Right.
A lot of people get offended when she says that, and I'm like, nope, I got you. Yep. Let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like you can cry and you can still keep working.
Yeah.
These don't have to be
Yeah.
separate things
Yeah.
that make up two different spheres of your mind or your heart. Right? Like you can
Yeah.
purge the thoughts.
Yes, and yes, and mm-hmm.
Right. Yes, and
Yeah,
yep.
and I've actually, with men, some of the spaces I share with men, I've said that you can cry. I can't cry right now, but you can cry. I'm working. Right? I would cross all type of boundaries. Cry. Yeah, I can't cry right now. I'm working, but you can cry right now, and
Yeah.
we're gonna keep going.
I had a client. I had a client show up last night. She showed up and she was like, "Coach, let me just go ahead and tell you that I would not have been mad if you had called me and canceled tonight. I don't feel like it. I don't know, right?" And I said, "Well, I'm glad you showed up." And then by the end of that session, we had done something that she had been procrastinating on doing for about a whole week and a half, and we did it right there in the session. And I was like, "This is the time where breakthroughs happen." Right when we think we're too tired, it doesn't really matter, it won't make a difference tonight, right? It's that one next step that pushes us into the transformation. And so I was just telling her,
Yeah.
like, I'm glad you showed up because this could have been the momentum that led you backwards rather than the one chance that you got to push and have somebody do it with you.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. Just the transparency and the honesty around it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like
Because
and I'm here, not but I'm here, and I'm here.
she was here. I mean, if
Yeah.
you had called me in counsel, I would not have been mad. No, you wouldn't. You would owe me nothing. Like, I'm good. And I was like, okay, well, thank you for telling me, and let's get to work. Right? Because that's where
Yeah.
not only the
Yeah.
educator but the artist in me jumps in, and that's what rehearsal is, right? Showing up when you don't feel like it, right? Many people, might take this kind of because they don't understand the back end of both, but like dancers are just pretty athletes, right? Like We showing up every day, 8 hours of rehearsal, training on the back end, all the things, right? And when you are in certain dance areas, literally, if y'all have been to like performances, there are some companies who run the full show before the audience gets there, and then do the whole thing at full pitch when the audience is there, because some of the training mentality is that you dance better when you're tired. Because that's when you can't lean on your own understanding. You can't lean on like it's just got to be there. You got to wake it up. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's some old school mentality, but I'm pretty sure it's still happening.
Right. Well, I mean, we've been through some stuff. We've been through some stuff. So when I hear, I'm like, is that pleasant?
Yeah.
That's a different type of level of pleasant. Like,
it is, Kurt. It is. Right. But I think what those things teach us is that what you said before, like we are resilient. And there is a place at rock bottom where the fatigue and the exhaustion is so heavy that we come to the moment of clarity to be able to do the next right thing. And that next right thing is not intellectual. It might not be logical. It may not be in our own strength, but it shows up in a way that there's no denying it, that this is what we do next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree. Yeah. Agree.
So for the people out there who
let me ask you a question about, if I may, how did you get to the point where you were able to powerfully infuse your rock bottom stories when you got to the mountaintop?
I think there's so much trained humility in dancers that I have been telling the rock bottom stories for so long in what I would say closed community, that it's really me being that vulnerable with other artists that really built Coach Christal. Right. So I would be, there's some dancers who are still in my company, who used to be in my company. Coach Christal was built. Really, the click happened one day. People had been calling me their life coach, and I'd be like, whatever, haha. Students would be like, can I come to your office? My friends and my family, they'd be like, can I talk to you? I'm like, okay, da da da. But it really clicked for me one day. A few of my dancers were in a meeting with me, and I was talking, and they put their phones in the middle of the table, and they put it on record, or at least one of them did. And I saw across the table that the other one was like, did you get it? You got it? Okay, you got it. I'll get it from you. And I was like, are y'all about to make a task list? And they were like, no, we're going to listen to this later. It's a whole podcast. And I was like, And I would notice that I would go to teach dance master classes, and the students wouldn't come up to me at the end and say, oh my God, I really love the choreography. They'd be like, oh my God, your words really stuck with me. Can you write that down? Can you say it one more time? And I was just noticing that the value was shifting, but it had to shift in me first, right? Like this could no longer be I talk a lot about vulnerability being my superpower. This was no longer about me sharing with the environment in which I felt safe. This was now about how these stories, how my own rock bottoms, how my own failures, how my own mechanisms for being successful in an unsuccessful body, from an unsuccessful place, from shifting circumstances, but always being kind of collaborative, has allowed me to kind of really methodically understand how we bring imagination into real life. Right. And so then I was like, I'm not a life coach, though, because my life is not your life. I can give you rules and rubrics to build a life, but I do know how to help you build a vision. And if you get a vision, I guarantee you have an amazing life. Right. And so that part of like having told all the stories to my company, and then watching them kind of embody what those stories of transformation and healing and I think overcoming look like. it was so fruitful in their lives that they really built the confidence in me to be like, yeah, but other people besides artists can use this. Yeah. Yeah. And they saw all the rock bottom, right? They saw it all. Like most of the dancers who worked with me at the time or who have worked for me for, last 15 years, they're the people who changed Gabe's diapers. They're the people who are backstage burping the baby. They're the ones who are like helping me program to sleep at 8:00 because when the show starts, he got to be quiet. Like all of that, they were there in all of that, in all of that, like, we cooking. Do you want some food? I'm gonna hold the baby while you write the grant application. They were there. They were in it. Yeah. They saw the whole thing. They've seen a lot of its growth. Yeah. But I think it's what you said before. Like, we don't grow in isolation. Right? Like if these people had not needed the thing that was on the inside of me to keep the company going, maybe I would have shriveled and been, in a corner somewhere. Right? Because people do. Right? But my first love is people. So it was no doubt that there was nothing in my mind that could let down the people around me. You know what I mean? Which is, again, like that's what kind of makes our coaching community different too, is that we have real community. Like I know what's going on with my clients. They don't hide. I mean, some of them try to hide, get text messages. Right. So like that part. Yeah. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Wow. I'm learning a lot. I feel
like these conversations always teach us both so much. It's like, and I think, I think the question you're asking is something that, and some people get, in their feelings when I say stuff like this, but, Oprah is my spirit animal. And I was listening to her talk on that hair series documentary. And she was literally saying, Tracy Ellis Ross asked her something about, when did you know something? And she was like, I knew when I gave my life to Christ when I was 7 years old, and I was going around on these church tours, speaking and memorizing poems and being able to inspire people that this is what I wanted to do. Right. And so we know several iterations of Oprah. We know, like growing up, being on the Oprah Winfrey Show, all those things. But, she was already a news anchor by the time I was born. And so the ways that she had to morph and change to keep her vision alive in an industry is often what I think about when we hit that clarity of rock bottom that really says, let me remind you of who you are. Right? Not let me push you into what you need to become, but let me just remind you that the seed of who you are has always been here. And we need to get back to the core, to neutral, right? So when we look at the Oprah of today, she's just embodying the 7-year-old girl who was supposed to be, reading a poem at Easter. That's when the first spark happened for her. Oh my God, I'm talking and people are listening and they're looking right at me and they're excited and I'm excited too. Right? Like that's it. So a lot of times we hit rock bottom is because we've been like trying to be something we're not. We've been working so hard, be so focused on getting to the mountaintop that we're so exhausted from what Jim Carrey calls being depressed, which he calls it deep. The only way to get out of depression is for deep rest, right? And he's like, yeah, that pretending is exhausting.
It's exhausted. Completely. Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah. Wow. Whew, that's huge. That's huge.
So before we let the people go tonight, where and how? Well, I don't know. I think you probably have several layers to this, but talk a little bit about the power of reflection.
So for me, reflection is one of those gifts you give to yourself, and it's ongoing, right? We have to remind to exercise our right privilege and the skill to reflect, because most of us are still hiding, and we assume reflection is going back or peeking behind a curtain or something we would rather not see. What I found that one of the things that helped propel me out of rock bottom was reflecting on the wins. It's easy to reflect on the losses. I was in there, but to reflect on the wins from way back when, like winning an honor camper at 8 years old, talking in full sentences at 2 with my mom. Like I was a baby. They was like, "Who is this child?" Like So I had to remind myself as part of my reflection of some of my earlier wins, some of the things that I know really why I'm here. And it all had to do around teaching and really embodying some things that I could be the example, right? So what showed me in this moment is 2 things. I welcome rock bottom because on a greater level, I asked for it, right? It went into my story. I'm this tough kid from the south side of Chicago. I went to college, graduate school. I got it. Like I'm that, right? And it was at the point where the universe was like, all right, we hear you saying more, please. We hear you saying that even if you have this beautiful life, you still need more notches in this survival mode for you, right? You got a few dollars in the bank, you got the house, you got the wife, you still need some more survival notches. Your wish is granted. Part of coming out of the bottom, I denounced learning through struggle. I denounced being in survival mode without denouncing the things that I went through. I literally denounced learning through struggle. Taking one for the team, I let all that go. I'm not that tough dude. I don't have to be. I'm not. I'm a duty as that rough and rugged, get it out the mud dude. No, I didn't even have that bad of a childhood. Like I created this whole story. Look, I ain't slept in no car. My folks did what they did, but I ain't that dude. I'm not a street dude. Right? I ain't sling dope. I ain't gang. I ain't kill nobody. I'm not that dude. I never have been. I had to denounce. So part of it is I denounced the old story. I killed it off. The protagonist, the leading man, the antagonist, I killed it off, the whole cast. And I started over. I started over.
That's good. That's good, Kurt. Right. And I just hear so many ways in there that, like you said before, like holding on to everything almost killed you. Right. And holding on to that cast of characters that you're used to your head will kill you. And I just, this may sound like I'm smiling, and I think people miss it sometimes when I'm, it's my joy is about having fallen in love with all the hard places. Right. And so like, I think about this, what you're saying, when my mother passed away, and my mother had done so much for the town that we grew up in. She had been like this public figure, what's good, bad, right, wrong, a politician, all these things. And when she passed away, there were people who were like, I would come see your mother, but I just can't stand to see her like that. And in that moment, what I realized was, it doesn't matter what you do for people. It matters who you become for yourself, right? Because people will always find a reason to not be, people always find a reason for you to feel like you're not enough. And I was like, my mother is laying in a nursing home and you're worried about how you feel seeing her. I was flabbergasted. Like that was a rock bottom moment for me of like, the team is no longer on your back, Christal. Like, because what if the team never comes back to the locker room? Right? Sure. And it's like in those moments, you got to be like,
I see you, Coach.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like that's another realization. You're holding things together of like, okay, like, but who am I holding this together for? Right. And so that was huge for me back in 18 when I was like,
wow.
thinking that I needed to, like, get everybody together, raise people's children, voice of reason, hold on to the family houses. I was like, does anyone else here? No? Nobody? Oh, okay. Right? We got to do that inventory.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Man. So I think that reflection piece that you're talking about is key on the wins and the losses, but really mostly on the wins, because that's how I think the momentum to recover, like the recovery momentum, the success momentum, gets us out of the bottom and, on our way back to the top. Where, because bottom is loosely defined, top is also loose. Wherever you going to be, wherever you going to be, right? I was joking with somebody the other day that people either want to be a celebrity or they want to be hiding in the corner. Like the middle is like so open, and nobody wants to play the B game. And it's like, it's a lot of work to just be, So yeah, man. Yeah.
Agreed.
We could be here all night. Next week.
Man, I learned so much.
Next week, we're going to be right back here talking about SoulCare, one of my favorite topics. I know it's one of yours too.
Mine as well.
Yep. So, y'all, next week, if you missed part 1, you could jump over to the Coach Christal YouTube channel and catch part 1. Part 2, part 3 will end our series next week, and we're going to talk about SoulCare. Bring your questions, and right below this video, we're going to post a link to Health and Healing, which is a free vision masterclass this Saturday, 10 a.m. Give yourself an hour, and I promise that I'll give you some tools to not only heal, but to stay healthy in the process, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. I'm your girl, Coach Christal. This is my friend, Dr. Kurt. We are out, and we'll see you back here next Wednesday.